Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today we are starting the very first vlog of 2026. So today's reading vlog is centered around something that I really love, and that is my local libraries, or libraries in general. I think we should all be supporting our libraries more than we already do. I know in the past I mostly used my library to pick up things that I'm kind of hesitant about and I'm not sure I want to spend all my money on, but going forward I think I'm just going to use my library for like anything, like as soon as possible, even things that I feel I will love, authors that I consider like a insta buy like type of author where you kind of just like buy everything that they publish. I just want to use my library more this year. I encourage you to use your local libraries. If you don't find one in your area or it's not as well stocked, I suggest looking at like some of the bigger cities in your state. I'm talking from the US perspective, but maybe this also applies to other places. Look at the bigger cities in your state and maybe they offer like an in-state e-library card. For example, I don't live near Harris County or Houston, but I do have a Houston based library card where I get a lot of my ebooks from because I live in Texas. So I get like a Texas resident e-card, something like that. Or if you don't mind like investing in a $50, $75, $100 out of state library card. I know that seems like a lot, but hardcovers these days can be up to like $30, so that's like a little over 3 books worth of money, and the return is a lot. So yeah, that is my library spiel. Let me talk to you about the books that I'm planning to read for this vlog. I have 6 in total, and it's a variety of books, which is what I really like to see in a reading vlog. So yeah, I won't go into too much detail about them right now. I will once I pick them up in the vlog, but I kind of just want to give the introduction with not a lot of rambling. First up, I do have The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches by Sango Mandanna. I believe this is like a cozy fantasy with maybe some romantic elements. And then I also picked up Never Let Me Go by Kazuo Ishiguro. I've been wanting to read from this author for a while and I'm really intimidated. This is like one of those authors that's in like really well read like repertoires. I think it's like lit fic, general fiction. All I know is that there's this weird group of kids that are special, and that's it. I also picked up Monstrilio by Gerardo, Samano, Cordova. I've heard great things about this one. I believe it deals with the grief and a dead child. And then I also have The Lion Women of Tehran by Marjan Kamali. I believe this follows 2 young girls as they grow up in Iran during like political changes. Stag Dance by Torrey. I haven't read this author's The Transition Baby. I heard that one's fantastic, but this is a collection of short stories and one small novella or novel. And then on my Kobo, I do have Ocean's Godori by Elainee Cho. I believe this is a sci-fi with South Korean elements. I could be wrong about South Korea, but it is a sci-fi. It's a lot of different books, a lot of different genres, but I'm really happy with the selection. I think to start off the vlog, I'm gonna go with A Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches. I think it's always good to start off a vlog with like something quick, breezy, and like get the momentum going. I hope I really like this. Most people said it's like a really good cozy. I'm picky with cozy fantasies. I really don't like a lot of plot heavy stuff. I'm here for relationships and character moments, growing community, that kind of thing. I don't really want explosive drama. So we'll see how I feel about this. I will check in when I kind of have a grasp of what this is about though. I hope you enjoy the vlog. I will be back soon. So, bit of a reading update. I kept forgetting to update you because I was having such a good time. I'm really happy that I'm enjoying this. At this point, I could see this easily getting a 4.5, maybe a 5, depending on how well the ending is. That's really all I'm writing on. I can give it a 4.5 now. If the ending hits it out of the park, fantastic. But this book, I am almost done. I have this much left. So you can see that I really wanted to get through this. This book is a cozy fantasy, and I was really nervous because I'm picky about cozy books. My dog is moving. I hope he doesn't hit the camera. We're good. So I was really nervous because I'm picky about cozies. For me personally, when it comes to cozy fantasies, I prefer the drama of cozy to be non-existent. I don't want anyone to even like remotely think about dying or anything crazy like that. The biggest conflict in the, well, let me backtrack. So in this book, we follow a woman who's lived most of her life alone. She's a witch, and she does every now and then come into contact with other witches, but for the most part she lives alone. Witches aren't supposed to gather because their magic is too strong, and magic seems like a life force in this world. Like, it has a personality and it wants to act up. So when there's more witches together, magic kind of just like misbehaves and like causes crazy stuff. So it takes like an experienced witch to kind of like take control of that magic, as opposed to it taking control of her. So in this book, we have a character named Mika Moon, and she is asked by a older gentleman to come to his home that he works at to take care of these 3 orphaned witch girls because they can't control their magic. And a solicitor lawyer is coming to visit the home, and if he sees something odd happening with these witches, then obviously like he's gonna be like, something's up with these kids and we need to take them away, whatever, you know. That is like the biggest drama, and I would say as far as drama goes, that's fine with me. Like I said, I don't want sword fightings and dragon and people are sick and dying. I don't want that in a cozy. Cozy is very much a mood thing for me, and if I feel stressed because someone is in danger, then it's not cozy for me anymore. I know cozy is such a audience driven genre. What is or isn't cozy is going to be different for different people, since cozy can be a setting, cozy can be a romance thing, cozy for me can be like a found family, like chill thing. A big aspect of this book that I really enjoy is the author's writing and humor. I don't know if this is that elusive British people humor that I hear so much about as an American, but if this is it, it's definitely for me. I think it helps the cozy for me is that every now and then there are like profanity, like fuck and shit like that. I do personally curse in my day-to-day life. I don't do it that much on video because maybe it makes people uncomfortable, I don't know, but I do. I'm very vulgar IRL, and every now and then there's like an F-bomb dropped in here, and that kind of makes this a bit more personable to me. Like it feels a bit more real, as opposed to very like Hallmark Lifetime vibes, if that makes sense. And that's another thing about cozy for me, is that like if it teeters too much into like so sweet Hallmark, like borderline Christian vibes, which there's nothing wrong with that, but you know, that's not for me. But this is working out well. There's a little bit of a romance, but it's not overtaking like the found family, our main character setting up roots type of thing. That's also a part of it, but like not a big part of it. So I'm really enjoying this, and I really just wanted to continue. I thought maybe I shouldn't update, but like, why wouldn't I update in a reading vlog? Obviously I should. I just wanted to keep going, but I'm having a good time. Honestly, at this point, I think I just want the ending to like hit it out of the park, and maybe my first official non-reread of the year will be a 5 stars, because I already have a book that's 5 stars this year, but it's a reread, so it counts, but it doesn't count. This will be hopefully my first. If not, I think a 4.5 is still super good. I will come back when I have an update. For this vlog, I think it would be really fun to see which books I would want to buy for myself and keep. I know that this vlog is supposed to be about like encouraging people to go to their libraries and like picking up books, which yes, but also a big part of using your libraries to see which books are for you and which ones you actually want on your shelf. So I think that'd be fun to see, like, of the books that I read in this vlog, which ones I'd want physically for myself. If not, then I don't have to buy them. I already borrowed them from my library. You know what I mean. We'll keep track of that for the end of the vlog. And I know there's already a sequel out that came out earlier last year. I will be back soon, probably in a few hours, because I do have other stuff I gotta do. So peace. I don't know if I like this angle, but we're gonna have to go with it. I did finish Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches. I did end up really liking this. However, as far as rating goes, I'm a little conflicted. This is definitely one of those books that is going to change rating, or maybe my feelings about it will change over time. I feel like that's what's going to happen with this one. Right now, I'm very comfortable giving it like a 4.5, and that's what I logged it as on Storygraph and Fable. I think those are the only two that allow you to do 0.5 ratings, but that's what I have it as for now. But that's also really normal for me. A lot of books change over time, like my feelings of them change. Like I like the book more or I don't. And honestly, like I feel like that's something that maybe more people should think about. You can't really tell the impact of a book will have on you if you're only like considering your feelings about it like as soon as you like close the book and you're done with it. But for now, we're gonna give it a 4.5. The ending was good. It wasn't bad at all. I wanted a more like emotionally heavy impact. There was moments throughout the book that I was getting kind of like choked up about, but I didn't really get that towards the end. The end was like super sweet and adorable and wonderful, very much what you expect for like a cozy, but it was very solid. I was just waiting for that little extra like umph to give it 5 stars, like a definitive 5 stars. I don't give 5 stars a lot. It's a very emotional thing for me. I know a lot of people are a bit more liberal over on TikTok. A lot of people are doing 6-star ratings now. I don't like that personally for myself and my reading, but yeah, that's where we are at here. I don't really know if I have anything else to say much more than what I did for the last update, like my feelings and stuff on the book. I would like to see more like witches in this world. The magic and all these characters are very like witty and like twee and very cutesy. I didn't mind it. I haven't heard, I mean, not bad things, but people didn't love the sequel as much as the first one, but we'll see. Good news, I did also start on the next read. Anyways, I did end up picking up Monstrilio. I'm not that far into it. I think I'm maybe like 20%, like 60 something pages, and very weird, very odd things going on. We are following a woman whose son passes away like very beginning of the book from illness, sickness, and she takes a piece of his lung and feeds it, and it like grows. That's all I know. A majority of it has been taking place in Mexico City, and there's a lot of women characters in this book. We follow obviously our main character, our mother character, but she also goes back to Mexico City mostly to be with her own mother and the housekeeper. There's also a friend, a very close friend for our main character who is like queer, and there was like a will they won't they for our main character and her friend. But that's all I've gotten so far. What do I like about this so far? I didn't expect it to be so straightforward. There's some really interesting metaphors and stuff in regards to grief, but it's not super, I don't know, I kind of expected more literary from this, and it's not, which is a pleasant surprise. That's kind of what I get nervous when I pick up something more literary focused, because I feel like I'm not well read enough to like review something that's mostly literary. We'll see how I feel, but this is book number 2 for the vlog. I don't know when I'll finish this, but if I have the opportunity to go back to the library, I will be returning this. You know, we're supporting the library here, which means we also have to return our books so other people can read them. So yeah, I just went on a tangent about this book and I wasn't even filming. So I usually don't do multiple check-ins for books unless I have something to say. I'm really conflicted. Like, I don't know what's, like, I know what's going on, but it's like I don't know how to feel about what I'm reading right now. I have about a little less than 100 pages left. I think I'm on like 248 and there's like 320 something, so I'm almost done. But I do want to just check in and say, like, I don't know what to feel. We are following different perspectives. The first perspective was the mother, and then the mother's best friend, and then the father, and I'm about to really get into Monstrilio's perspective, who is like the being that we're following. I think one thing that is really affecting my, I don't know if enjoyment is the right word, but something that I just can't get past, and maybe this is part of like the surrealism of it all, is that most people are like ready and willing to just like move on from the fact that this boy Monstrilio even exists. He is a piece of a lung that grew because our main character fed him like caldo de res or some shit. Like, I don't know what she fed him, like fideo or something, and he grew. Like, that's weird, and that's not possible, which I know is fiction, and I've read like Stranger Things, but everyone's reaction is just like, let's like deal with it and move on. I would be freaking out like every single day of my life, but I guess that's part of like that subgenre or that theme or whatever you want to call it, of just weird shit is happening and we all just gotta deal with it. Sorry if you hear the TV. Every fucking man in this house can't hear, and they all have to blare their TV. It pisses me off so bad. Sorry, I just have to cuss out my family, and the only people I can do that to is with y'all. Everyone's just kind of like dealing with their stuff, and obviously Monstrilio is like at the center of every one of these people's lives, but sometimes it's too flippant for me the way these people go about their lives, and they have like this beast existing, and I feel bad calling him a monster or beast because he just wants to be like a person. As he grows older, as it gets bigger, like he's getting more like sentience. I don't know, I've never read Frankenstein, so like don't come for me if I haven't, but maybe this feels like a Frankenstein narrative. Again, I can't say whether or not it is, but if you have and you maybe read this book and see like the parallels there, I don't know if these would pair well with each other. But as Monstrilio grows, like he's trying to understand people and relationships more, and I'm about to get to his chapter, so we're gonna see more from his perspective coming up soon. Why do we have the reactions that we have? I think that's part of like why I don't go into like surreal stuff, because weird shit happens and no one has like the appropriate reaction. I don't mind if crazy stuff happens, but like, why aren't you reacting? Like, that's weird to me. That's weird to me more than the fact that this thing grew out of a hunk of lung, you know? But I will say that there are a lot of moments of grief that I really like seeing, especially from the mother. She does some crazy stuff that I'm like, damn, if your son hadn't just died, I would slap the shit out of you. But you're obviously grieving, and you go through things when you're grieving, and some of that doesn't make sense, or it's like harmful, but you gotta do it. You gotta do what you gotta do. I do like that part. I do like seeing how people grieve and how that affects relationships and stuff. So that is my update. I don't know what I'm leaning. Definitely not lower than a 3, but we'll see how the last hunk of book, I don't know if you can see that last piece right there, we'll see how I feel about that. It could be very impactful because we're finally getting Monstrilio's perspective. I will come back when I finish this. Back. So I did end up finishing Monstrilio. You know what was so like sad about this is that the last section of the book where we finally get to read from Monstrilio's chapter, that was my favorite section. I really just love reading from like the flawed characters, the monsters, the creatures, whatever you want to call it. Like, it was so fun reading from his perspective. I wish we got more of that. I understand why we had the mother, the father, the mother's best friend perspective, and then obviously Monstrilio's, but the father and the best friend perspective I could have done without. I understand why they were there, but they really didn't do much for me in terms of like fleshing out some of the themes that we were reading. Maybe the father could have touched more on how he's moved on from his original son's passing, and how he views Monstrilio a bit more differently than his wife did, because the mother, obviously her relationship, having birthed her son originally and then having created Monstrilio, it's a very different experience than his father. I'm thinking of like how much more I could have really enjoyed this if we just got more of Monstrilio's perspective. I'm giving this a 3.5 for now. Like I said before, like ratings can change over time. My enjoyment of books can change over time, so that's okay. My dog is snoring, sorry about that again. I do like a lot of the metaphors. I said this felt like a Frankenstein kind of perspective. This is also kind of like a coming of age story for Monstrilio in some parts, especially towards the end and like the journey he goes through. I like that part. The grieving, how people grieve differently, all that was fine. I feel like this was supposed to be like more impactful. I definitely thought this was going to be like minimum 4, hopefully 4.5 stars, the way a lot of people like really hyped it up and really enjoyed it, but it didn't hit for me as hard, which is kind of sad and disappointing. I wanted this to really enjoy it. I really wanted to enjoy it, and it's just, we'll see what parts of this book last for me. But yeah, that is done, and I'm really happy because if I go to the library this weekend, which I'm hoping to, I can return this book and the witch's book, and more people can check these books out. That being said, I did start on my next read. So starting on book 3, I decided to go for Stag Dance by Torrey Peters. I haven't read this author's first book that was like so really well hyped. This is a collection of short stories and a novel. I've already read the first short story. It was called Inject Your Friends and Loved Ones. A lot of these have to do with gender, specifically transness. The first short story was really cool, like dystopian take on trans identity and gender dysmorphia, and like how the world would change if this gender wasn't so set in stone. And we're following a character who is trans and her journey before and after this this dystopian setting. It also kind of just touched on things that I was kind of somewhat familiar with. I'm not trans, but I have trans friends, and I do kind of like peep in and like hear what the gender conversations are happening on social media, like in general. Like I just kind of keep my ear to the ground and see what conversations people are having. Yeah, there's a lot of things on like trauma, trans trauma, relationships, and how those work when you're dating someone who is trans and you yourself are trans, or you're not dating someone who's trans but you are, like T for T type stuff. Fairly straightforward. But yeah, we'll see how I feel about the next one. There's only like, I think there's I think there's 3 short stories, and I think the main story is called Stag Dance. That's supposed to be the novel, the titular novel in this book, but it's not a long book. It's like 248 pages, so hopefully I can finish this by Friday, and have 3 books down for this vlog. This is such a cool cover. I know this is like a big trend in covers, especially lit covers, where you have like a piece of artwork with like a very bold colorful font. I kind of like that style of covers. It's much better than like cartoon covers, unfortunately, which I hate. Yeah, that's the update. Reading short stories, which I do want to read more of. I'll be back. I also forgot to mention, I got this thing on Etsy, which I don't know if it's like a drop seller or whatever, because I saw a lot of people had something similar to this, but this is a, you know, a reading tracker. I've already switched it from 2 to 3, but I've read 3 books this year, and I really like it. I think it's really pretty. I had obviously my name put on it, but yeah, I wanted to share this cool bookish thing I got. So I have a bit of a reading update, but first I did finish filming a TikTok, which is why I look a little bit better than usual. It's just a bunch of recommendations for like YA teen fantasy, so if you want to check it out, go for it. Link is always in the description for my other social medias. But I did finish the next short story in Stag Dance, which was called The Chaser. I like this one. It really dealt with the intersection between gender and sexuality, and how that can kind of feel a bit more nuanced when you throw in a character that is trans, especially since people don't have a clear understanding of the difference between gender and sexuality. But we follow a character who is a cis boy, and he is in boarding school, and his roommate that he gets is male, but his roommate likes being a girl and likes being talked to like a girl and likes feminine things, and they start a sexual relationship, and our main character insists that he is straight, which he is. I would say he's straight, especially if his roommate does identify as a woman, despite being born male, and it creates a lot of confusion for him. He doesn't quite get it, and it gets very intense, very violent, especially like animal violence. I think there was also a theme of like violence inherent in like cis boys that I think the author wanted to touch on. The topics that she explored in the first short story, which was called Infect Your Friends and Loved Ones, I got where she was going with it. However, I didn't enjoy it as much. I don't know how else to say that. The way that she presented those themes just kind of felt like, here it is, here's what you're asking for. But this one I felt more interest in. I really liked how she touched on these themes and these topics. But yeah, very violent in this one. If you're very hesitant about animal violence, like extreme animal violence, be very wary. But I think this one's my favorite story of the 2 so far. I am now going to get into Stag Dance, which is the novella of this book, which is the titular novella. I will get into that. I broke a nail, or the nail fell off. I don't know if you can see that. I'm hoping to finish this soon. I will be going to the library tomorrow, so hopefully I can turn in this book and the past 2 books I've read. Okay, time for an update. I did end up finishing Stag Dance, the like titular short story in this novel, or this collection of short stories. It's the longest one. It's like 100 and something pages. I thought it was such an interesting concept. So in this one, we are following like a lumberjack, I guess, someone who's worked in this field for it seems, quite some time, and he doesn't really have much else going for him. And his boss gathers the crew around and is like, hey, so for some extracurricular fun, we are gonna have a stag dance, and if you want to, you can attach this like fur pelt fabric near the front of your pants, like near your belt area, and that signifies to the other men that you want to be courted like a woman for this dance, which is so interesting, because then you have our main character and other men like him, I guess, like, you know, workers, kind of fall into like feminine traits and I guess actions. It's such a great concept to like show gender and how we interact with gender and gender roles. You have these men, and I don't think any of them, except for maybe one character, could like fall into the role of like trans, but you have these like presumably straight-ish men, cis men, who are like participating in gender fuckery, I guess. And I just really enjoyed it. I think this is the story, I think, that really plays with these themes the best. I guess that's probably why the author or the editor was like, we're gonna name the whole collection Stag Dance. This one's just so good. One thing that I thought was interesting is that these men, and I don't want to assume like their intelligence or whatever just because they're lumberjacks, but our main character, you know, the way he talks and, you know, what he does and his backstory, you know, you don't really get the sense that he's like some sort of academic or well-read whatever, but his inner voice and inner monologue is very like, I don't want to use the word overwritten, but it's very detailed. And I don't know if that was like an intentional kind of thing for the author. It probably is, because the other short stories aren't that like overwritten. They're pretty straightforward. But for this one, there was like a large vocabulary and stuff like that. So maybe the character is, or maybe that the author is using the writing to, I don't know, feminize the main character a bit more. I don't know if that's something on me that I assume or I associate like this type of like very academic writing with like femininity or something, but I really like this one. I thought this one was really good. Obviously sexuality also plays a part in this because sex comes into the picture. There's like sexual content here as well. Sex and gender kind of blurs things together the way we saw in the previous story. I only have this much to go, so I'm nearly done with this, but I did go to the library, as you saw. I'm probably not going to read any of these for this vlog, but I thought to pick up A Witch's Guide to Magical Innkeeping, which is a follow-up to the Society of Irregular Witches, which you saw me read earlier. This one takes place in an inn, and we follow a character who like brings back her aunt from the grave, like she was dead and she brought her back, and my character gets in trouble for that, and then they run an inn, and it's like cutesy, you know, it's a sequel. So, and then I also picked up The Seventh Veil of Salome by Silvia Moreno Garcia, which I've been wanting to read something else from this author, but I don't want to read all her work so quickly because I really want to cherish this author's work. This takes place in 1950s Hollywood, and we follow three characters in some way connected to this film about this character Salome. I've had good experience with like Hollywood-based fiction, so hopefully I'll enjoy this. And then I also picked up Hungerstone by Kat Dunn. I did not know that this was a Carmilla inspired story. I've seen this cover everywhere last year, and I was like, oh, whatever, it's like some sort of like lip fic, I'll look into it later. But then I picked it up at the library and I read the flap and I was like, oh, this is Carmilla. So that's what I picked up from the library. I did film a TikTok about what I got. I'm doing much better with like TikTok content. I don't know, TikTok is like fine and stuff, but I love long form content. Also, I like messed up my screen thing. I don't know if you can see the cracks. Rip. So I did finish Stag Dance by Torrey Peters. The last story I think was also really interesting. My favorites were probably the last two stories, Stag Dance, and the last one's called The Masker. And we're following a trans girl or trans woman who is going away for a Vegas weekend with a bunch of other trans women. I think they had like a Facebook group and they're all like just having a good time in Vegas. While they're there, our main character meets a gentleman who is attracted to our main character, but it's definitely more of a fetish, and the author's pretty much exploring that line, that blurring that happens when someone's attracted to you as a trans person, but it also can come off as fetishy. And because most people want to be desired in some way, trans people also have that fetish thing to deal with, because, you know, they want to be desired, and fetishists do desire them for their own purposes. And so, you know, it's that thing that they have to grapple with. And I really like this one. I think the reason why I like this one is because that is a concept that is kind of not 100% foreign. You know, women get fetishized, Latino women also get fetishized, but this is a very different type of fetishization that I don't deal with. So that's why I really liked exploring it in this short story, and I really liked this one as well, Stag Dance. But yeah, I think this collection overall, this was the last story, I think this collection overall was really like fun to explore gender in general, if that's something that interests you, is like talking about gender, but also with the lens of like trans femininity, because that also like adds to the conversation in ways that you may not realize if you're not trans. So I'm giving this like a 4-star rating, like a fairly not safe, but like a very like definitive at least 4-star rating. We'll see how I feel about it going forward as time passes by, but for sure not going to be less than 4 stars. And I am kind of interested in reading this author's debut that got a lot of buzz, which is Detransition Baby. Yeah, this is one book down, and I will be able to turn that into my library coming up soon, whenever I go again. But I did pick up my next read, which is Ocean's Godori by Elainee. This is a space opera, and it takes place in a futuristic Seoul, I want to say, and we're getting conversations about like people living on Mercury and Mars, so it seems pretty far off into the future, and we're following a couple of different characters. I haven't gone that far, I'm only gotten chapter 3, and we haven't really got to the plot, but we're following a couple characters. Our main character is named Ocean, and she is a pilot. Getting the sense that Ocean probably did something in her past that had a lot of consequences for her, so people kind of treat her as like, we know you're good at what you're doing, but you have a little bit of a history. I don't know what that history is yet. And I believe her best friend, who is the heir to a mega corporation, think like the Samsung family, if we're talking about Korea, I think is going to be accused of murder, and that starts off the plot. I think this is a duology, I'm not 100% sure, but like I said, I haven't gone that far, so I don't know what's gonna go on after. Like, I don't know what more is to the story. It's a space opera, so I'm assuming there's a lot more parts. But yeah, that is my next read. I don't know if I should end the vlog after that one, or should I read one more? We'll see. No, I think I can read one more book after this, but we'll see. For sure, we're finishing Ocean's Godori, and I'm reading this one on my Kindle. One, because if you can't physically check out books from your library, you should at least try to check out ebooks. And 2, my biggest problem when it comes to reading, or one of my biggest problems, is that I always want to read it physically. I feel like it's just more engaging for me. Sometimes your library might not have the books physically. Sometimes if you want to buy the book, you know, you might, there's benefits to reading ebooks that I don't always take advantage of. So this is my effort at trying to read more ebooks, and I did get a Kobo this past year for Christmas, so yeah, we're trying to read more ebooks. But anyways, that is the update. I will come back when I have something more to talk about with this story. So I'm about 75% into Ocean's Godori, and unfortunately it's just starting to like now get good. I really hoped that this was gonna just like grab me from the beginning. It's like a space opera, so I was expecting like fun characters and interesting like plot lines and stuff. And while there were some moments that I was like, this is like cool, I guess, it feels like it took a while to get to like an exciting part, which is not what you want. I think it was like around 60% where we finally get to the actual plot that was described like on the summary, where someone is accused of murder, and it was the character that I mentioned before. This author does do that thing where you have like sci-fi-ish sounding names, things that aren't always like fully explained. For some things I can definitely like use context clues to be like, oh, this is what that word means. But for some, I'm kind of like, what is that? What are we talking about? Like, what is this sci-fi sounding thing? I don't know. And it takes me a while to like figure it out. Like, okay, that's like always like not fun. But now we are finally at the point where it's like getting good and exciting, and we're kind of with like, we have our cast of characters that we started off with, and they've kind of teamed up with like a cast of like rogue mercenary types, and it's getting like fun and exciting. I could also start to see the seeds of romances brewing, and I'm not like mad about any of the possible couples. I know this is a duology, I believe, and I'm interested to see how this will wrap up. I don't think we have too much more to figure out. We're at the point where it's like our characters just kind of have to do a few things to kind of like solve the story. So that's my update. I think after this I'll probably read Never Let Me Go by Kazuo Ishiguro, and that will be the end of the vlog. I also cut my hair. I don't know if you can tell. I just needed to cut a couple inches off because I had like split ends. But yeah. So I finished reading Ocean's Godori last night or this morning at around 1 to 2 in the morning. And this book is precisely the reason why I cannot DNF. I hate not seeing things through. And if you DNF, that's your business. But this book got so much better towards the end, which I'm so happy. I think an average or your average reader would probably have DNF'd this if they weren't having fun, and I wasn't really enjoying myself too much. It wasn't anything bad, but I just wasn't enjoying myself in a way that I thought I would if I was reading a space opera, which I am. I'm reading a space opera. It's supposed to be like fun, and you have like really cool characters. And like I said in my last update, it was getting good. Like we met up with these cast of characters, this like an additional cast of characters that were just really entertaining, and things were getting like fun and exciting. And pretty much the last 25% of the book, so fun. I would say I went from like a very generous 3-star to a very safe 3.5 stars. Like I'm very confident in that. It does kind of end on like an abrupt kind of note. We don't really get like a huge conclusion, but the second book is already out, and I could easily just borrow it from the library and continue on reading it from there. I don't know if this is something that I would personally pick up to have on my shelves. It would depend on how well the duology wraps up, but yeah, like this is such a good reminder of why endings are so important to me. When I used to consistently do like dedicated reviews, I'd always like leave some time to talk about the ending without spoilers, because the ending can really like make or break a story, or at least help the story in some way, and this is like a prime example of like that happening. So yeah, that is Ocean's Godori. In the last book of the vlog, we are gonna go for Never Let Me Go. Let me go get it. So here we have Never Let Me Go by Kazuo Ishiguro. I don't know much about this other than the like accolades and critical acclaim that this author has received for all of his work. I don't even know like the writing style or anything. All I know is that we're following a group of students, and they're special in some way, and there's probably going to be like a big reveal. But yeah, that's all I know about this one. It was a prize finalist, the Booker Prize or Man Booker Prize at the time. So this is next on the agenda, and then we'll finish up this vlog. I did also film another TikTok today, so that was actually kind of fun. I like got up and immediately like worked on it, and I will come back soon. So we need to talk, because the last time you saw me, I was going to pick up Never Let Me Go by Kazuo Ishiguro, and I typically do mid check-ins throughout the book just to let you know what my current thoughts are. But this is definitely a book that not that I couldn't put down, but I really didn't have a good sense of what my thoughts were as I was reading this, and before I knew it, I finished the book before I could stop and give you my thoughts. I truly couldn't put thoughts together as I was reading this, and I can only really put some sentences together now that I'm done. Yeah, I finished this book and I'm landing on 4 stars, but this is one of those books that absolutely my thoughts can change, and my rating that I will give it could change. In this book, we are following a character. She's older now, but she's looking back on her life at this school with some of her friends. And throughout the entirety of this book, we get a sense that these kids are special, and we really don't know why, like what their purpose is, like how different are they from your average regular child. And a majority of this book is just like vignettes of this character's life, like getting this cassette and listening to the music, or this like art class that they took, and you know, talking to some teachers. It doesn't really seem so large, like large scale. The writing though was so gentle, and it really paired well with this like innocence that we have throughout the book, and that eventual like innocence lost. I obviously don't want to spoil like what the like reveals are about this. I was so, like I said, I was kind of lost on how I felt about this the majority of this book, because I thought, you know, the vignettes were fine, and you know, if you really like this concept of like memories, that's fine too. But really the last 40 pages have this emotional gut punch, and that's all I really want to say. But that goes back to my thoughts on endings, like I talked about with Ocean's Godori. Endings are so important, which is why I can't DNF books. I would have never DNF this, but my perspective on this book definitely changed, or it came together because of this ending. I wrote down in my reading journal that I'm surprised I didn't cry reading this. And I feel like in some way maybe I adapted or adopted the main character's kind of resignation to her life, her friends' lives, everything that she's gone through, and her purpose in life. I think a lot of people, when I was looking through reviews after I finished, I only look at reviews after I finish, some people really didn't like the kind of nonchalance that this character had, but I think resignation is the best place, or the best verbiage that I could use to describe our main character. This was very emotional in ways that I didn't expect it to be. I'm still thinking about this book when I'm supposed to be wrapping it up. I'm really glad to have read from this author. He's been on my like literary bucket list for some time now. I'd like to hear if you have like another favorite of his that you would recommend. I know he has quite a really well-loved backlist. So yeah, please let me know in the comments about what you think about any of his other works. But that means that it's time to wrap up this vlog. I'm sorry I didn't do a check-in for this book, but I really couldn't. Like I said before, the entire purpose of this vlog was to highlight libraries, specifically my library, but the use of libraries. So I obviously checked out a few books physically and an ebook, which I love. My library, I love that I got so much use out of it this beginning of the year. As a reminder, I read The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches. I gave that 4.5 stars. I read Monstrilio, which I think I'm landing on a 4-star with that one. And then I read Stag, which I'm also landing on 4 stars with this one. And then I picked up Ocean's Godori. That one's 3.5 stars. And obviously Never Let Me Go, 4 stars. A lot of 4 stars, which is great. I think my rating that I saw on Fable or Storygraph was like a 4.1 so far this year, which is pretty good. I'm assuming it'll go lower as it usually does. But I think this was a successful reading vlog. I love doing these. I know they're not everyone's favorite. They're not like the most like, you know, attention grabbing, but I just love talking about what I'm reading. So let me know down below in the comments about anything that I talked about. How often do you go to your libraries? Talk to me about your libraries, what you love about your libraries. I know they offer so many different other services other than books. I will link my social medias down below, as well as some far more important links. Feel free to like, dislike, comment, or subscribe, or do neither. It's all cool with me. Thank you so much for watching. Please support your local libraries, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.